Hey, good. Yeah, no. Thank you very much for that mercy applause right there, sir. Everybody else felt guilty, and like they haven't even done anything yet, but I guess we'll clap for them anyway. So, but that's the way to get warmed up. We got a fun show lined up for you. Got some great Fisher poets, some music for you. I'm Ron McDaniel. So if you've not been to Fisher Poets before and you think, holy smokes, we're in the wrong place, that guy is not a fisherman. There's a story behind that. If you're here late enough tonight, you'll hear that. But with me is a fisherman, and she's also a small animal veterinarian in Soldotna, Alaska. And so if you would please welcome my MC and great friend, Meezie Hermansen. So we're gonna guide you into port tonight. We've got some great storytellers. Before we introduce the first one, all right, a couple of things. If you enjoy what you hear, and you're going to, let them know, right? Don't be afraid to give some raucous applause. We've got KMUN that's sending this thing out all over the world through the internet somehow. I don't understand any of that. And then we've got Brad that's putting this out on YouTube right now as we speak. And so people are watching on YouTube. And so let them know that you're supporting these poets, these singers. Last announcement that I have, and then Meezie, I'll turn it over to you. There is the umpteenth annual on-site poetry contest tomorrow night. And you do not have to have performed up on stage. It's for anybody. As long as you have your button and you have a poem that meets the criteria I'm going to share, you can get up on stage and you can enter the contest. And it's a ball. It's a great chance for you to try your own poetry chops. So here's the rules. We'll repeat them several times tonight, but it can be no more than 30 seconds long, and they'll flag you out if it's longer than 30 seconds. So it's got to be tight. It must include the words full moon. The first and last lines are the same but different. Include 3 Bodie prepositions, locator words, okay? You English teachers or people who paid attention in school know what I'm talking about. The rest of us need examples like this. Examples are a-beam, astern, aboard, aft, starboard to port. So 30 seconds, got to include full moon. First and last lines the same but different. Include 3 Bodie prepositions. And we'll repeat that some more tonight. Thank you for being here. Nevada is our sound guy. I think we sound great. Thanks for Nevada. Give him a big round of applause. And now Meezie's going to introduce our first Fisher poet.
Hello, everybody. So nice to be back in Astoria. I think we should just get rolling. And so I'm going to introduce our first performer. We've got Jefferson, Holland, and he's come from a ways away. He's from Annapolis, Maryland on the Chesapeake. And he's going to do some great music for us. Jefferson.
What a thrill to be here. I'm just very excited. So I'm from Annapolis, Maryland. I'm a former river keeper for the Weston Road Rivers just south of Annapolis. I'm a former assistant harbor master for the city of Annapolis. I launched the Annapolis Maritime Museum, so all that kind of fun stuff. But I'm actually from the little neighborhood across the harbor from Annapolis proper, and it's called Eastport. And it's a little peculiar. It's where all the watermen live. Watermen's what we call fishermen back there in the Chesapeake Bay. So this little waterman's village is where black women, black and white families live side by side, working out on the water. And it's kind of the funky over across the tracks kind of place. And them Eastport boys got this odd tradition when the sun swings to its equinoxial position. They build a little fire down along the docks. They doff their shoes and they burn their winter socks. Yes, they burn their socks at the equinox. You might think that's peculiar, but I think it's not. See, they're the same socks they put on last fall, and they never took them off to wash them, not at all. So they burn their socks at the equinox in a little old fire burning nice and hot. Some think incineration is the only solution. Washing them contributes to the Chesapeake's pollution. So through the spring and the summer and into the fall, they go around not wearing any socks at all, just stinky bare feet stuck in old deck shoes, whether out on the water or enjoying a brew. So if you sail into the harbor on the 21st of March and you smell the snow like Limburger mixed in with the laundry starch, you know you're downwind of the Eastport docks where they're burning their socks for the equinox. Another fun job I had was a PR guy for the famous Annapolis boat shows. And this is something that's been going on for 50 years, and the whole harbor gets taken over by floating docks and boats from all over the world, and people come from all over the world. And the opening day of the show is always VIP day. And one year we had an actual VIP show up. It was Martha Stewart. She came in with her entourage and swept down to the Hinckley dock and saw this beautiful 50-foot long picnic boat, jet tri, mahogany everywhere, antique. And the dealer showed her around the boat, and they sat down in the cockpit and said, okay, I'll take it. She had one of her entourage write a check, and she signed it and handed it over to the clerk and said, okay, I'll have my man come over on Monday after the show and pick it up. And the fellow said, oh, no, ma'am, you don't understand. These boats are built to order. And I have 8 other customers build their boats before I get around to building yours. Well, how long will that take? Well, I could probably deliver it sometime in September. I said, young man, do you know who I am? I said, yes, ma'am. You're number 9. Well, outside of the Annapolis Maritime Museum is an old oyster shucking house called the McNasby Oyster Company building. And that's where everybody in the summertime goes chicken necking. Do you do that around here? Chicken necking? It's where you tie a chicken neck around a string and you lower it down over the dock and you wait patiently for a crab, and this is a blue crab in the Chesapeake Bay. Come along and smack onto it, and you lift it up and scoop it up with a long pole net and dump it in a bucket. And that's chicken neck. And on Back Creek is where the McNasby building is, and that's where this song is located. Curiously, it's called Back Creek Crab. I'm gonna get my bucket and a chicken neck, an old piece of string and a long pole net. I'm going down to Back Creek, I'm gonna get me some crabs. I'm going down to Back Creek, sit in a pier, dangle my line while I sip on a beer. Going down to Back Creek, I'm gonna Back Creek crab. Get me some big fat males, let the little ones go. If they scuttle from the bucket, they can bite you on the toe. Hard crabs, soft crabs, even the shedders. Take them home and eat them, the sooner the better. I don't need a knife and I don't need a mather, just a Back Creek crab to satisfy my palate. Going down to Back Creek, I'm gonna Back Creek crab. Ba-da-dee-dee. Ba, join in. Ba ba da ba ba dee dee. Ba 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 da dee ba da ba. You know the words. Ba da ba ba dee dee. Ba 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 dee ba da dee. Ba 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 dee da ba dee dee. Ba 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 da dee ba da ba. Ba ba dee dee ba da dee ba da ba ba ba. Good job. Give me some Back Creek crab, put them on a simmer. I can eat about 1,100 dozen for dinner. Give me Back Creek crab and a little Old Bay over Chateaubriand any old day. I don't need a knife and I don't need a mallet, just a Back Creek crab to satisfy my palate. Going down to Back Creek, I'm going to Back Creek crab. Whoa, 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 whoa. Going down to Back Creek, I'm gonna Back Creek crab. One time I was performing and Jimmy Dean showed up in the audience. It was like, oh, Jimmy Dean. It's amazing. He was there on his yacht there in the harbor. And I always admired his Big John song. And I thought, I'd love to do a Big John song, but the only real Big John kind of hero we had was a guy named Muskrat Green from a little town south of Annapolis called Deal. And Deal, first you have to go from Annapolis to Edgewater to London town to Deal. Oh, no, Shady Side and is in between. So he was famous for chugging raw shucked oysters. Put them in a big quart bell jar and just go, no. And he entered all of the oyster eating contests and won every single one of them. So there was this legendary man from the town of Deal with a heart of gold, with guts of steel. To eat a lot of oysters was his only dream. They called him Muskrat Green. As a little bitty baby weighed just 2 pounds, but he grew to be the biggest water man around. At 5'6", he weighed 235 with a belly twice as big as any man his size. He was a hard-eating, hard-driving water man, but his appetite for oysters got a mite out of hand. At an oyster-eating contest, nobody could beat him. They said, they can't shuck them fast as I can eat them. He won every eating contest on the whole East Coast. He could chug a quart of raw ones like a cocktail toast. After eating 300 in a minute, 5 seconds, he said, well, it's time for lunch, I reckon. He was the greatest oyster eater that the world has ever seen. He was Muskrat Green. They sent him off to London town, the one near Wales. And this time what he had to eat was snails. Tastes like rubber's all he had to say, but he ate a record number of them anyway. He beat the best eater that the Brits could show, downing 2.3 pounds of escargot. He did it in 2 minutes and 43 seconds, and that got him in the Guinness Book of World Records. And back in Deal, they say Muskrat put that tiny tidewater town on the map. They made him honorary mayor of the town and stuck him in a limo and drove him all around. And now he's up in heaven with all them harp pluckers searching for the former world's fastest oyster shucker. He was the greatest oyster eater that the world has ever seen. He was Muskrat Green. Now, as a riverkeeper, you're very aware of how various elements of your environment are going. And in the Chesapeake Bay, one of the biggest issues we have is the submerged aquatic vegetation. And some places it's growing, some places it's shrinking, but it's always crucial to the health of the environment. That's where all the baby crabs and shrimp and fish hide away from the predators. Oxygenates the water, cleans the water, does great things, but we've had to work to restore it in many places around the bay. But when I heard that phrase, subaquatic vegetation, submerged aquatic vegetation, I thought that's wrong as a poet. It just doesn't ring. If it's submerged, it's aquatic. But if you say subaquatic vegetation, there's music there. And what kind of music would it be but a tango? Ha, ha, ha. Let me see if I can get it right. The baby boomer generation has fostered overpopulation, waterfront property inflation, development deforestation. Deforestation leads to soil erosion that wreaks environmental devastation. Subaquatic vegetation. It's also known as SAV. And of course, you know this is a sing-along. So let's divide this ship's company into 2 crews. The starboard watch over on this side Sing with me, S-A-V, like this. S-A-V, S-A-V. Everybody, S-A-V, S-A-V. Keep that up now. S-A-V, subaquatic vegetation. S-A-V, subaquatic vegetation. S-A-V, subaquatic vegetation. S-A, all together now with feeling. S-A-V, 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 S-A-V. You comprehend the complications. Erosion brings about siltation, which covers up the vegetation, creating sunlight deprivation, muddies the water till the plants must desist their photosynthesis. For subaquatic vegetation, everybody now. S-A-V, 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 S-A-V. You comprehend the complications. Erosion brings about siltation, which covers up the vegetation, creating sunlight deprivation, muddies the water till the plants must desist their photosynthesis. Yes, it's a cause for consternation. For subaquatic vegetation, everybody now. S-A-V, 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 S-A-V. Now listen for your information. It's not a hopeless situation. We must act without hesitation, enforcing soil conservation. Instead of tearing down our trees, we must needs plant some seeds. The subaquatic vegetation can be saved by reforestation. S-A-V, 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 S-A-V. It's not a tricky operation, engaging in reforestation. Just make a little excavation and stick a sprout of vegetation in. Thank you. Planting a little tree can be the solution to runoff pollution. It can be the one salvation for subaquatic vegetation. Everybody now, S-A-V, 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 S-A. One more time with feeling. S-A-V, 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 S. Let's hear an ovation. Subaquatic vegetation. Hey! Thank you. Thank you.
Dang, that's a way to start the evening. Yeah, that was awesome, and I do appreciate the work with the keeper groups too, so very good. Next up, we have a friend of mine from Homer, Alaska. If you guys can welcome Nancy Lord, she's awesome.
Thank you all for being here. That was great to hear from Jeff. So yeah, Meezie and I are both from the Kenai Peninsula in Alaska, and we also have a keeper organization, Cook Inlet Keeper. Okay, I'm going to start with this one. It's called A Poem in Defense of the Salmon Poem. The old poet complained to me one day, "Everyone new to Alaska writes the same damn cliche. They put pen to paper and write an ode all about salmon as though it's new gold. It's been done 1,000 times, gives us nothing new. It's unoriginal, it's tired and dull too." I must have turned red, knowing what I'd done. The first thing I'd written was about a salmon run. The creek had been full of humped backs and toothed jaws. To me, it was magic. I was completely in awe. But now I'd been told it was silly to think that art could be made from a fish that was pink. After that, I was cautious when writing of fish or anything my friend could so smartly dismiss. But many years later, a new thought emerged, and that old scolding was something I purged. It seemed to me then, and more strongly now, that salmon are worthy of all we avow. Everyone in Alaska who lives here or not should feel the same gladness about what we've got. Those salmon, those streams, the ocean that gives, all that good in Alaska that keeps us and lives. Everyone who partakes should write up an ode to a beautiful creature, be part of the fold. To ode means to sing, and what better to do to honor a fish in a way that is true. Celebrate without shame, with the joy that is pure. Let art be what it is. Let salmon endure. Okay, this next one is new. I just wrote it, and it's called Glass Balls for All. There is a fisherman I know who ran a tender to the west. He liked to skiff ashore to hunt for glass balls in the dunes. Who doesn't love to find such treasures, these artifacts of Japan fishing? Recycled glass from sake bottles was hand-blown new and sealed airtight with buttons marked to show the maker. In decades past, they served good purpose. They kept those nets afloat. Along came cork and all those plastics to end them in the 40s, except for all the lost ones turning in the North Pacific gyres to sometimes sweep to shore. Though rare they are to find these days, the tenderman in Bristol Bay was one to know and had the means to search above the beach where storms had pushed them by the hundreds well past the high tide marks. They lingered there, half sunk in swales like Easter eggs in nests of grass. The tender man cut buoy balls to turn them into bags. He picked those eggs and filled his bags. He carried them away. He took some to the Kenai River and tossed them from a boat. The dipnet fishers there were startled to find them floating past. They thought a sudden wave had worked them loose from somewhere in the turf. Dozens more and dropped them from a plane. They floated then in Kachimak, surprises for their finders. Today, they sit on windowsills as conversation starters. What stories do their owners tell? Not this one, that's for sure. So my partner, the mentioned tender man there who's in the audience tonight, we used to sit on the west side of Cook Inlet for many years, and our neighbor was named George Hayden. He fished in Trading Bay since the 1940s and actually had a little hand-packed can called the Trading Bay early on. But when we first knew him, he fished from a 30-foot wooden dory he built. He called it the Running W. I had written about his boat and so on in my book that's called Fish Camp, but for this purposes, I revised a passage. So this is called The Running W, in memory of George Hayden. The Running W was even then old and, like George, unique in its mold. Its hull was built to cut water like a V, but doubled to W offered more stability. The deck laid above, the catch fell below, though salmon deserved that, you know, to stay cool and out of the way until delivery at the end of the day. Built to work and take a beating, she'd nature's knees and plywood sheeting. All of her was stitched with twine, the workmanship was close to fine. The gunnels came from saplings split, smooth from lines and hands and grit. A coat of fiberglass, so right, once red and later orange bright. A special feature was the pipe hole. Moving anchors was the goal. A line passed through was winched around to raise by eye bolts from the ground those massive rocks for holding nets in rushing tides. We got to know this boat quite well. George helped us out, I'm here to tell. We crossed the inlet in rough seas, lifted anchors and moved trees. That workhorse boat, the big old brute, she earned her way and her repute. That first year at season's end, we walked to the beach, 4 hands to lend, to bring the Running W ashore with muscle and brain, the latter more. Come along pulled and log rollers rolled, the heavy boat creaked while we cajoled. We dug away sand and tossed away rocks. We cranked and we pushed and assembled some blocks, inch by inch up the beach with the water behind us. How far would we be when the night would come find us? But George had a way, another stage to the plan. With more ropes, blocks, and cables, stage 2 began. We cranked from an angle to lift up a side, then let her down gently, a far different ride. But before she came down, we fit underneath her a recycled treasure, a scavenge it were, a giant steel buoy sufficiently round. This worked like a wheel to cover some ground. Still we cranked and we cranked to get to a ramp, to a dock, and at last, at day's end, to the camp, where she settled on down to await the next spring, to roll back to the beach with hope of some kings. We did this for years, helping George with his boat. We got smarter and faster and did it by rote. But a time came at last when she settled for good. As far as I know, she's still there in her hood, on the dock, at the camp, the buoy beneath her, the Running W, that boat. That's the end. I prefer her. So I am really a prose writer. I'm only a poet for FisherPoets. So I'm going to read just the first 3 pages of a short story. It was published in a climate change anthology a couple of years ago. It takes place on a halibut fishing boat. It's called Come Help Me. On May 1, aboard the Morning Star, Yulia is learning the various meanings of May Day. In Russia, she knew it as a major holiday. In the Soviet days, it had meant speeches and parades in Red Square, and later in her time, it was a nicer day for celebrating spring and workers. In America, Peter is teaching her. It involves putting flowers in a basket and dancing around a pole with ribbons, and maybe too, depending on who you are, communist sympathizer or not, saying kind things about workers. But more importantly for them now, May Day is all one word and is what she must shout into the radio if the boat is on fire or sinking. she should shout it 3 times in a row and give the location. This is how you work the radio, Peter has shown her. This is the emergency locator beacon, and this is how you turn it on, although it should turn on automatically if it goes underwater. This is the emergency life raft, and this is where you release it. These are our survival suits. Now we put soap on the zippers. Now we practice getting into them. Gumby is a rubber man, yes, from a cartoon. No, hood now, zip all the way. Now we do it again, faster. He uses the timer on his big, complicated underwater watch. Now you are dead of hypothermia, he says, if she's too slow to zip or can't get her hair tucked into the hood. She is very confused, but no, Mayday has nothing to do with spring or flowers or workers. It's French. Peter says, Venez Mayday, come help me. Yulia can barely imagine her other life, the one that's disappearing with every minute on the water and every mile from land. Only 2 days ago, just when finals week started, she'd sold her textbooks, tossed piles of papers into the trash, kissed her favorite microscope goodbye, and flown to Kodiak to meet Peter. Her master's degree in marine biology and the award she'd received for her thesis were happy achievements, but she didn't need the long robe and flat hat, nor so much hugging. She has a new job, sticking hooks into stinky herring, clipping the short lines onto the long line, watching the lines go down, and then 6 hours later, watching them come up, big white belly fish taking shape as they swing towards the surface. Maggie's clothesline, Peter says, like big white panties coming up, and it's for her to unpin them. Bigger than panties, maybe pillowcases and sheets. Who is Maggie? Peter doesn't know this. It's just an expression. Her happiness comes not just from big halibut that will make money for Peter and her. There's the rest to love: sky, waves, gulls with lonesome voices, some fish frying in a pan, a deck to scrub, a movie to watch and forget, mountains far away with snow. And Peter, of course, she wants to be with this man, Perpetua, engine oil on his hands and fish oil in the brain. Yulia is learning about the American enterprise system, quota shares that mean Peter can catch certain pounds of halibut in the part of the ocean called Area 3A. Enterprising is when you figure things out, like in science, but for more practical and personal reasons. Peter is always figuring things out, how to make something work, how to use mayonnaise instead of the eggs she somehow forgot at the store. She wants to be enterprising too, and now she's already learned how to run the hydraulics so that Peter can gaff the monster fish. When he was not mad about the eggs, he called her a natural at baiting hooks and snapping ganyons. She felt proud when he praised her good hands. She's not so confident about the knives. It's Peter's job to gut the fish, hers to pack the insides with ice. They will fill the hold this way. Yes, all the weight of the school year, all the effort she'd made for so long, it falls away until she is like one of the gulls herself, that one, sitting on the water, riding up and over a swell so lightly, like it is only feathers full of air. So, one more, a very short one, and it's by my partner, Ken Kastner. So this is Stripes to Stripes by Ken Kastner. I hatch like my brethren salmonids, attached to an orange opal of nutrition, and like all the others, my skin wears its camouflaging stripes. At sea, I brighten to silver and blue-green, capable even of passing as a sockeye. Silver bright, some call me in admiration. But as I return to my native stream, I dress again in stripes, bruised purple and streaked in the yellows and greens of Devil's Club leaves overhanging my spawn. Born as a chum with a name that means marked. I come to my spent end as a painted and snaggle-toothed dog. Thank you all.
Thank you, Nancy. That was great. Next up, we have a buddy of mine. He hails from right here in Astoria, but he spent a lot of time in my neck of the woods, drifting in Cook Inlet, stealing my fish. So, this is Tom Hilton.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Astoria, Oregon. FisherPoets gathering. I'm Tom Hilton. I'm from Uniontown, Astoria. I'm the son of a socialist and my dad was a Columbia River gill netter, and my mother was a Cowles Prairie Indian. I'm glad to say I'm adopted by those people, and they gave me this beautiful life that I'm going to share with you tonight. So my first poem I'm going to do tonight is called Uniontown Supreme Court. I wrote this about a group of men. They used to get together and have coffee, and these men trolled and dragged and crabbed and shrimped and gill netted the Columbia long before there was a bridge and long before there was, well, the way it is now. So this poem's dedicated to the men of the Uniontown Supreme Court. All that's left is legends, names etched in a granite wall, black and white photos for sale in the Maritime Museum store. Boats of wood, hands of steel, hearts of gold. All races, colors, and creeds, a man was valued by his word, his firm handshake, his deeds. White apron supermodels, grinning from ear to ear. Days were measured by seasons, not years. Tatted edges, faded yellow-brown, ripped, torn. Memories of the glory days when gill netting was born. Dilapidated docks, rotten pilings, broken tops beneath our tidal view, skeleton bones, partially submerged, floating homes. Lonely net racks, empty bluestone tanks, broken windows, moldy, musty, dusty, dank. Wooden corks, lead lines, little nets stripped clean of all their glory. No more mud-up, coffee time, just empty chairs waiting for stories. Court is in session. Yesterday's myths, see-through, faded, transparent, not bitter, jaded. Today's monofilament tangled nets, Jesus box, deadly catch drama overstated over prima donnas. If those pilings could talk, they be gratuitous of sport fishermen's greed? Countless stories. Work is our joy, fortunes made, love, families, together, life, salmon, laughter, heartbreak, loss. Of butterflies and bow pickers, double-enders, power scows, fires and tenders, 4 bits a pound. Clifton, Brookfield, Altoona, Alderbrook, Upper Town, Uniontown, Celilo. Where do they all go? A salmon culture, a menagerie of people, a colorful past, romanticized, plagiarized, and eulogized by people like me. Fishing is more than tradition, Governor. It's a religious ceremony. Ebbing current, tide shifts, surge of change, pulling our nets, taking us under. These words bury my pain. Black and white photos, names etched in that granite wall. Let's not forget them, the true legends of fall. This mighty river, what it was, full of salmon, sturgeon, seiner, trollers, gill netters, cannery women, stomper, Astoria's fighting fishermen. The story is over. All the legends have died. Politicians lie. Last of my tears shed. Obviously not. Cried. Filings could talk. Ask one how it was back then. It'll probably tell you those days are gone forever, kid, with the stroke of a pen. Thank you very much. As Meezie said, I grew up here, but I also spent my life in Alaska from 1977, and then I quit, and then I went back in 2013, 2014. I fished with my dad. He was an original contract fisherman here from Whitney, Fidalgo. They hired him to go up there and catch fish for him, and there was this guy, Harold Dovinsbeck, standing on the beach. He had a case of beer and a fifth of whiskey, and he said, hey boys, sell me your fish. And it was him and three other guys, three other guys went with him, Abby Ihander, Eldon Corpala, and Bill Gunderson. And they were known as the Bunkhouse Gang. So my dad had this phrase, and his phrase was, one drift and we all go home. And when we would fish, the guys would be talking on the radio, and they'd say, oh, we're gonna run down, and my dad would say, no. Up, you gotta go up. That's where they are, that's where they're going. They're not going down, they're going up. So this is, because it's one drift and we all go home. I took some video in 1998. We sat on the beach for escapement. It was a brutal summer, and I walked around with a VHS camera and took video. And I had 6.5 hours of video, and my son took that video and condensed it into a 20-minute short film. And it's called Because It's One Drift and We All Go Home, and that movie did the film circuit and stuff like that, and we did pretty well with it, and it was quite a deal. But I had sent it to him when he was living in New York City, all the cassettes, and I sent it with some smoked salmon and some t-shirts, and the smoked salmon leaked all over everything. But thankfully it didn't mess up the video. So this is Because It's One Drift. And I can tell you more to the story. Was I was sitting at a desk job in Portland, and my buddies are up in Kenai, and they were sending me messages, and they said, hey, Tom, this is what's going on. The fish are moving this way, and this is going this way, tide's going this way, and everything's that way. And I said, just go right over there, lay out. They almost sunk the boat. They had so many fish that day. So I'm a little bit emotional. I'll tell you after this, I'm done with this, but I'll tell you why. And so this is Because It's One Drift and We All Go Home. Man, now that you got your ticket, the weather will be great, the reds will be thick, just enough to keep the boat off the gear, hanging like grapes. The girls will be friendly, the food will be delicious, jokes will be told, legends made, and chasing dogs is foolish. The cast is all gathered, new faces and old, greenhorns and legends, looking for the big score. From the Nilchik, Homer, and Halibut Cove, to the west side set netters and the girls on Fisherman's Road. They'll be counting down the minutes, throw the wooey ball, looking for bunches hitting and telling stories in the mess hall. Because it's summertime in Alaska, along the peninsula, the reds are running and jumping and finning their way home. They're running up the inlet. That's how they run in the land of milk and honey in the midnight sun. Maggots line that college hole bank, pukers with full boats. The dippies are up to their neck in our wakes. An eagle flies alone. South wind blows, pizza at Paradiso's, sun never sets, baseball at Oilers Park, drive down to North Beach, the boys belly up to Kenai Joe's bar. The smell of blood, sweat, Gurry. The gulls shuffle along the tin roof of the bunkhouse, hurry, squawking, talking, sharing a meal. No time to lick your wounds or let your bruises heal. Not so young anymore. No youthful zeal. Ice in the cooler, boats clean, windows washed. Crank up the tunes. Eric Hyde, it's your time, but we'll watch. No time for sleep, looking for jumpers. Radio crackles, the sound of squelch. Last sip of coffee, Mountain Dew belch. South 210, that's the heading. South end of the island, that's what we're betting. The Reds are laying along the edge of the bar. Last of the flood, high water down. Load the boat, head to town. Because it's one drift, and we all go home. East on the flood, west on the ebb, that's the rules to follow. Look for the jumpers, follow the seams, up the inlet, sunken net in your dreams. Because it's summertime in Alaska, and along the peninsula, the Reds are running and jumping and finning their way home. They're running up the inlet. That's how they run in the land of milk and honey and the midnight sun. So I'm going to have a moment of realness here. Right before I came in here at 5:30, I just got a text that said one of my good friends died of a heart attack at 5:30 this evening. So kind of a tough gig there. Come up here and do this. I built a crab company inside Pier 39 with my buddy Floyd Hookham. And the guy I mentioned in the boat, Eric Hyde, is the guy who passed away. So I think we should have a moment of silence for this gentleman because he served our country in the United States Army Special Forces and did a bunch of stuff, helped make our world a great place, and he did a lot of wonderful stuff for our community right here in Astoria. So maybe let's give Eric a moment of silence. This is a poem written by my good friend Hillel Wright. There's an island up north out in Queen Charlotte Sound that the trawlers know well when they're Prince Rupert bound. When the easterly gale scuds the clouds across the sun and the whitecaps come to Carson, God's pocket they run. Oh, the entrance is narrow and the anchorage is deep. Boats wrapped up together while the deckhands doesn't sleep. And the skipper drinks coffee as the cabin lights burn. And the dreams of tomorrow, God's pocket astern. The fishing drags on through the calm and the storm. And the tonnage adds up as the crews dream of home. When the season is over, the fish ice below. When the darkness falls early, to God's pocket they go. Oh, the entrance is narrow and the anchorage is deep. Boats wrapped up together while the deckhands do sleep. And the skipper drinks coffee as the cabin light burns. And he dreams of tomorrow, God pocket astern. Then up in the morning, at the first light of dawn, across the wide channel, the trawlers have gone. The island lie lonely with the rocks in the wind. God's pocket remembers all the sailors within. And now I want to do something fun. This gentleman that got on here earlier this evening, he had y'all singing and stuff. I got this nickname, and I've had this nickname for a long time. And I coached high school basketball at Tualatin, And when I walked around the track one time at a high school football game, everybody started chanting, time, bomb, tom. Time, bomb, tom. Time, bomb, tom. Come on, let me hear you say it. Gosh, man. What are you guys? Come on. Yep, that's right. Time, bomb, tom. Thank you very much. Have a great night.
That was a good first hour here. So we're going to take a quick break. Before we do, I just want to remind you guys about the poetry contest. So you have until about 10 o'clock tomorrow, I believe. Rules are no more than 30 seconds. Include the words full moon. The first and last lines are the same but different. You can interpret that. Include 3 Bodie prepositions, which are locator words such as abeam, astern, aboard, aft, to starboard, or to port. So you guys can try and come up with something. You don't have to be a Fisher poet. Anyone with a button can enter, and that will be at the end of the evening tomorrow after all the performances. So good luck with that, and we'll be back here in just a few.
Hey, here we go. You ready for the second set? All right, we are live from Astoria, Oregon at the Liberty Theater. Our friends from KMUN up there in the big seats right there. Thanks for broadcasting this worldwide. So, good. Yeah, I did not realize until like 2 minutes before I stepped up here to get to MC this set. This is kind of the way fishing is going. Okay? When FisherPoets started, it was a lot of men. Years ago, if you'd go look at any of the crews, they were a lot of men. The ladies are taking over. We've got an all-girls set for you this next hour. That makes me a bit nervous that you guys are that excited, and that means I'm in the way. I want to introduce somebody. I'm going to do it quickly because I want you to get right to listen to what she has to say. She's not just a dear friend. She's an incredible small animal veterinarian in Soldotna, Alaska. But she was a fisherman first and a fisherman forever before she became a veterinarian. She's a set netter from Cook Inlet. Please welcome my dear friend, Meezie Hermansen.
They call you red, or sometimes blueback, my precious little sockeye. But that is not the Cook Inlet salmon I've come to know. Death darkens your dorsum to a navy blue, but in life, dime bright body bedazzled as aurora green dances down your spine. You reel through the ocean like the northern lights ripple across this sky, silvery scales a galaxy agleam. As you near the river, the mix of fresh and salt water changes your once luminous body, and you temporarily take on muted purple tones. But by the time you reach the spawning grounds, you glow once again, now a vibrant red, capped with forest green. And before you die, you emit fiery orange spheres filled with the future. All the colors displayed throughout a lifetime, and we tend to narrow it to one. My splendid little sockeye, you are the supernova of the seas. This one's called Bad Weather. The wind ambushes the sea. Air and water grapple as spindrift forms and flies, but the waves march on, breaking on the shore. Poised in the surf, we wait for a flat spot, hoping it appears. Johnny is braced in the bow, the pull-out line clutched in his hands. John stands near the stern, ready to launch. I hold steady by the stern. Johnny starts to pull, and I shove off until we are afloat, then leap in. John follows suit, and in unified chaos, we pull our little skiff out into Cook Inlet. A wave crashes over the bow, slams the deck, and soaks us. The flat spot was a mere dot in this angry sea. We haul out to deeper water, fire up the outboard, and head north towards Humpy Point and our locations. Some people claim there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. Fishermen know better. This one was written off of a photo that a friend sent me of some skiffs in the wintertime. This is called Waiting. The skiffs are huddled all in a row, filled to their gunwales with a cover of snow. Bows pointing outward, looking over the ocean as if eager to launch. Been missing that motion. Their sterns peeking aft, the silver against white, succumbing to sleep on days of short light. Memory feels the tug of the painter, the sounds of the surf ever grow fainter. Deeper in slumber, sinking down as they doze, passing the winter, a flock in repose. They are dreaming of cork lines and sockeye and web and bucking the current where they flutter the ebb. The arms of a trailer, cradling their sides, moving up towards the bluff away from high tides. At the close of the season, the scenes are all fading, but the skiffs pass the winter, endlessly waiting. This one is called Portrait of a Fisherman. A blue water canvas, we paint our lives. The ebb and swell of the ocean rhythms compose our musical score. Toiling midst the waves sculpts our bodies and our minds. The seascape influences a fisherman's outlook, shapes our palette and perspective. Upon a blue water canvas, we paint our lives. There is a timeless symmetry to fishing. Previous generations plied these same waters, toiling midst the waves, sculpted their bodies and their minds. Whether born to or brought to fishing, those who remain are part of those who remain are tied to a hardworking legacy. Upon a blue water canvas, we've all painted our lives. The sea never leaves us. On the water or not, it is the focus of our anchoring gaze. Toiling midst the waves, sculpted our bodies and our minds. They say every painter paints himself. When we reach the vanishing point, may we find a masterpiece. Toiling midst the waves, sculpted our bodies and our minds. Upon a blue water canvas, we painted our lives. So I'm not very good at being super creative and just making stuff up. I always write from what's happened. And unfortunately, that is 100% true on this next one. And even worse yet, it's 100% true and it happened to me. And even worse is it's 100% true, it happened to me, and I'm gonna tell you the story. This one used to have a title, now it's just the one about the feather. I found a certain feather in this, I must confess. I put it in my pocket for it was most impressive, but wait for just a minute to understand my scare. No, our fish camp's overrun with squirrels everywhere. This year there's so many that we are losing track of which we haven't trapped and which are coming back. Now, on to my story. As you may recall, there's treasure in my pocket when nature comes to call. I hit the head and drop my trowel, assuming the pose. When I sit on something live, well, swiftly I arose. A tickle against my keister had me shooting through the ceiling. With visions of varmints was a frightful feeling. As I came to my senses, I found there in my pocket the splendid plume that shot me off the can like a rocket. There's often a lesson in many a mishap. I guess that's why they put the feather in the cap. Impossibility. It is the thing you don't believe, the thing you don't try. It is a foregone conclusion. Like changing someone's political opinion on Facebook. Like getting a good night's sleep before the season opener. Like fishing a season without your father. But maybe impossibility is not a foregone conclusion. Maybe it is merely the thing you haven't tried. Although I still do not attempt to change people's opinions on Facebook. And 4 hours of sleep before a season opener would still seem a luxury. And although he's been gone for 27 years, I still have not fished a single season without my father. So I am a lifelong Cook Inlet set netter, and the history of that fishery is a history of loss. My dad was born in Kenai in the 20s. I'm from a long line of kids, so that's actually true. And Grandma was born, she was Russian Aleut, born up there in the 1890s. And so, our set net fishery, we may have already set our last net. I'm not sure if they just haven't told us that yet. but to the salmon, I owe generations of gratitude. And that's a debt I will never be able to repay. So anyway, this one is called A Fisherman's Lament. I can sing the song of the sou'wester, recite poetry of the prevailing winds. I've been regaled by the gusts and chastened by the squalls and eavesdropped on secrets whispered by the swells. I've learned lessons from the fog. Our eyes can be deceived. And been instructed by the kelp. Hold fast to that which grounds you. And been trained by the sea. There are wonders in the depths. This expanse has been my teacher. In my memory is tucked the dialect of the waves and the dialogue of the gulls and the mythology of the ocean. This life is art, and it coils and weaves and traces the heart, and though it is often gnarled with knots, this inlet has been a lifeline. I've been blessed by her embrace. I found words amongst the fish, caught my breath between the breakers, plucked peace from the roar of this world. So, how do I navigate the death of a fishery that's been a family tradition for generations? With grief and a grateful heart. I'm going to leave you guys with this one, just a quick, it's about a fish pick, and a fish pick is just a handle with a hook on it. It's not to use on the fish, it just helps you get the web off the fish. And so that's what this is about. It's called Tools of the Trade. Sometime after I was born, I learned to fish. No. I already messed it up. Let me start over. I got it. Sometime after I was born, I learned to walk. There's always the unexpected. Okay. So, sometime after I was born, I learned to walk. And shortly after I learned to walk, I was given boots that fit and gloves that don't. This is the world out of which I was grown. Swift with a fish pick honed from a piece of drift, the dull bent lashed with a whipping of twine, it was carved perfectly fit to fit this hand of mine. The deep red paint pick as I picked up skills. Dad made them custom. In my hand it stayed. It became my first tool of the trade. Now, I'm all grown and my dad is gone, but in this life he still lives on, and sometimes it's the little things you miss so much. Like that little red pick that used to clutch. There's picks at the gear shed. They have them for sale, but you'll find out quick as one flies over the rail that the factory picks all sink like a stone. They don't float like the ones Dad lovingly honed. No, when you drop one, which you know you'll do, it'll sink out of sight down deep in the blue. Each one that goes sailing, caught up in the mesh, well, that's $7 sent to Bangladesh. I look back now on this life I've had. Nothing fit better than that pick, carved by my dad. And aren't we the same when you think it through? I'm carved original and so are you. Though the world tries to make us factory cut, here is the secret. You know what? Be the best yourself you can be. Not just another in the bin you see, for the world needs your heart as it is made. So do your best with your tools of the trade. Thank you, guys.
I've been here 18 straight years. I remember when Meezie came, an introverted veterinarian that was trying to sit outside the circle of a class we were having on stage presence. And we made her jump up into the circle, and aren't you glad we did? I'm going to bet that's going to be true for our next Fisher poet. She grew up in a trolling salmon family in southeast Alaska. She fished a few seasons in Elfin Cove. For the last 10 years, she's been running a tugboat as crew and operator here on the Columbia River. For her first time up here on the stage, give us a big, loud welcome for Megan Emerson.
Thank you, Ron. You might think the most dangerous time for a tugboat on the Columbia River is when the spring floodwaters are raging, or at night when it's blowing 90, or in January when the spray is freezing over the bow and onto all the winches. But no. It's on a nice Sunday afternoon in August between the I-5 and the I-205 bridges. Because there are 500 drunk people in small watercraft. And they're all joyfully refusing to help me with the chore of not killing them. I'm pushing a block of barges that are 600 feet long by 84 feet wide, and either I have loaded barges, which are 14,000 tons, or I have empty barges, and it's always windy when you have empty barges. So I'm sideways in a dredged channel trying not to go aground. And I know it looks from the outside like we have the whole river, and I'm aiming at some little boat just to be a jerk. But it's really just me up there, white-knuckled, binoculars glued to my face, begging, please move, please move, please move, while I try not to go aground. And here's some of the people that I'm talking to when I say that. There was the Still Crazy, a sailboat that swerved right in front of me, running down the wind, wing on wing, and they lost. Dramatic pause. They lost their wind because I was blocking it with my 30-foot tall barges. So they went dead in the water, and then they couldn't figure out how to turn. And then there was the wakeboarders. They saw a tow the size of several football fields aiming straight for them. So they put the least skilled and the least buoyant and the most inebriated teenager in the water. The dad in the speedboat pulling an inner tube of small, untethered children, who must have thought it'll be more fun for the kids if we drove over the wake on the bow on both sides. Hold on, little Sally. Wait, how many kids did we have again? It's a good thing we got them all matching camo swimwear. And then there was a cabin cruiser about 40 feet long, and I don't know if it was being driven by a ghost, because it all the way across the shipping lane in front of me. Not a single person visible on board. Nobody in the wheelhouse. Couldn't find them with the binoculars, just backing off into the sunset. Were they asleep? Were they dead? I'll never know. And it haunts me. I try with all my might to keep my fellow mariners safe. But sometimes, in the quiet of the wheelhouse, I do secretly hope that they develop an allergy to alcohol and maybe some kind of weird algae-based rash. So this poem was written for a dear friend of mine, Mariah Warren, who is emceeing elsewhere tonight. I've known her for 25 years. We went to high school together. And she does all the cool things that I wish I could do because I get seasick. So I wrote this in 2011. To Spain, she'll soon meet. To Spain, she'll soon meet. And Amsterdam sheds tears. Huge quantities of rum will not affect the course she steers. The syncopation of the waves will never give her pause. She'll wear her Helly Hansens and seductive lacy bras. Dearest, train your eyes upon that blurry green Furuno and tell us wild tales on your return to Juneau. So obviously my current job doesn't have a lot to do with fishing. I do have one recent experience on the river that combined the two in a way that made an impression on me. It's a little risky to tell here because the main subject might be in the audience. So if you recognize yourself, look, I forgot the name of your boat on purpose, and I didn't tell the Coast Guard anything, so we're cool. The only trivia you need to know for this story is that on the VHF radio, channel 13 is ship-to-ship communication. The FCC says that this channel is available to all ships, but it has to be about navigation, and you have to keep your messages brief. So it's a dark night in September. River traffic in the Portland-Vancouver harbor area is brisk. There's also from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. a gillnet opener. The local boats are little bow pickers for the most part. Some of those captains have been out there for 40 years. Some of them are brand new. But all of them are trying to make a living on the few salmon that are left to them after the dams and ocean trawling, sport fishermen, sea lions, drought, and a dozen other troubles take their cut. These are commercial boats, but they conform to Coast Guard approved VHF hailing standards. And they're all trying to set and pick their nets in the middle of all of this traffic. When I got up to the wheelhouse at midnight, I could tell that one of the fishermen was having a very bad time. I think it started when a cruise boat ran over his net, and this guy's night just disintegrated from there. His GPS wasn't working, which he figured was probably sabotage or maybe a conspiracy. And he was swearing and bitter and trying to pick a good, satisfying fight with anybody on Channel 13. This guy had lost his cool, but he had not lost his stamina. His pauses for breath were short enough that ships couldn't manage to make passing arrangements, and tugboats couldn't call the bridges. After an hour or so of ear-blistering monologue, a group of old-timers from the fleet started cutting in every time he unkeyed the mic to brutally and comprehensively shame him. It was a "dad is disappointed in your life choices" style emotional slaughter. 13 got real quiet for a good few minutes as we all paid our silent respects to the deceased. And then the ships started making arrangements again, and some gillnetters called them to make sure their nets weren't an inconvenience, and everyone was on their very best behavior. And then our guy came back from the dead. And he was on Channel 13 for another 4 hours. He was passionate and eloquent, maybe more than a little drunk. He was threatening everyone's wives and mothers, but he was also deeply grieving the lost legacy of salmon on the Columbia River, asking us all what his kids were supposed to do now that the whole thing had been bought up and dredged and poisoned and dammed and monopolized by the shipping industry, and you used to be able to make a living out here. And towards the end of the night, half hoarse, he yelled at his own fleet, almost crying, "And no one comes to the fisheries meetings. They have them 4 times a year, and you a-holes never show up." And man, haven't we all been that guy now and then, in the privacy of our own heads? He was still keeping the mic keyed pretty consistently, but sometimes another mariner would manage to break in and insult him. But they could not compete. Even the tugboat captains were laid low. At one point, he coined the sickest comeback of the night, and maybe of all time, which was, "Yeah? Well, you look like someone who eats tilapia." He finally got quiet around the end of my watch. And that morning, as we were tied to the dock, this guy, now fully hoarse and probably hungover, and having somehow eluded 100 enraged mariners, as well as the United States Coast Guard, did a full-blown apology tour of the entire Portland-Vancouver harbor. His little worn-out bow picker pulled up alongside us, and my captain for a minute thought he might get shot. But the guy just rasped, "Hey man, I'm sorry for being an asshole. I was having a real bad time." And then he gently handed a whole fresh king salmon to us across the deck. And then he idled off into the sunrise, looking for the next boat.
Hey, I told you the future looks bright, doesn't it? That's a first-timer right there. Yeah, give her another round of applause. That's great encouragement. You know, in fact, make all these folks that are listening out there on KMUN realize they should have been here this year and they'll be here next year. So get here early because there won't be many seats left after these gals are doing what they're doing here. Hey, our next poet, I am so honored to introduce her. The first time she came, I got to hear her, and just once again, I was like, boy, the future of the talent is good here. I try and look it up. Kansaku-Sarmiento. Portland, Oregon. She was raised in Hawaii in 2016. She became a Bristol Bay fisherman where she still is, and she hadn't missed a FisherPoets gathering since. Welcome Alana to the microphone here.
Introduced by a legend. Thank you. I told him that he had full blessing to try to pronounce my name even if he butchered it. So he has a pass. It was very, very close. Kansaku-Sarmiento. I love that. Thank you all so much for being here and for supporting the magic that is this tradition. I decided that tonight I'm gonna read all of my earliest Fisher poems. I only really write for this event every year, so these are the poems that I wrote for the 2016 and 2017 Fisher Poet gatherings. This first one is called She. I wonder why it is that almost every boat's a she, that female seems to be the natural gender of the sea, that yachts and skiffs and ships and boats of every kind, and even the water on which they float, are of a common sign. Perhaps it should be mentioned that the Latin word for ship is the female-gendered navis, so she rolls off the boat. Valid though the thought may be, the surface is not scratched. Much more can be discovered if we look under the hatch. In a trade that's been male-made for centuries on end, the answer lies with what's inside the hearts and heads of men. Let's name the boat after the goddess of the hunt or sea. For honoring her name, perhaps she'll deal kindly with me. Or as time passed on vacant sea with not abroad in sight, perhaps they thought for company they'd do just one thing right. When mermaids failed to soothe their eyes, they could still turn to one. The ship, as a mother or as a lover, could help them feel at home. So, far away, near shores unseen for months or years on end, the lonely, dirty, love-starved men would be aboard a friend. If the ship were named after a male, power would be the theme. But at some point, we all have learned no ship can e'er compete with the power and the depth and sometimes lack of empathy that the sea, another mighty she, displays for you and me. Perhaps they thought to name their boat something a bit more humble. A female ship on a female sea might keep them from the stumble. Perhaps it was that ships were known as crafted works of art, a thing of beauty and finesse, a labor of the heart. The female form is often known to be art-like as well. The curving form, her features soft, her laughter like a bell. Perhaps it was that if the ship were named after a woman, men would feel more duty then to keep her lines a-hummin'. For some believed that females needed the care of strong-armed men, and if they rightly take care of her, she'll bring them home again. Or perhaps it is that ships, by nature, for better or for worse, bring to mind the silent suffering in which our mothers are well-versed. That the wide and welcome spirit we bestow on every ship reminds us of the life that springs from many woman's hip. I do think it takes a woman's strength to handle the demand of keeping safe the hopes and dreams and gear of 20 men. For it's often only women during clear and present danger who work with the waves and tides instead of warring against nature. But times do change and roles do shift. Who stays on shore or sea? Women now take to the bow and join the company. Perhaps it is that lonely gals will fabricate new ships. Painted names of Frank or Tom or Pa will guide their trips. You may think soft, but strength of mind is key. The last man standing in any fight quite often is a she. What a shame it took so long for women to sail out and join the vessels of their gender, squelching superstitious doubts. We should all be grateful, women and men alike, and everyone in between, for the trailblazing women of fishing who have passed on to us the light. And if 200 years from now, boats are no longer always she, I'm glad to say I'm sure we'll have great numbers on the sea. Thank you. This next one is, it's called We're the Coolest. There's a holiday that the Broderick family, John Broderick co-founded the FisherPoets gathering, that they established in Bristol Bay at their set net location of Nushagak Point. It's called Fish Naked Day. And when they first started the holiday, the peak of the fish of the run, the sockeye run, was a lot earlier. So they would always celebrate on July 7th. And then as the runs got later and later, it became a lot riskier to fish naked on July 7th because sometimes you were like in the middle of the peak instead of like enjoying coming down from it. But now you know the backstory. The weather is cold as we disrobe. It's Fish Naked Day, or so I've been told. Excited I was all spring and summer, but when the day came, what a bummer. The weather is chilly, the water is gray, a little too nippy for some on this day. But talk comes cheap, and we women are proud, after months of big talk, giving up's not allowed. We grab ice from our tender, all clothing in place, then pull up to our nets, stony brows set in place. It is time, I declare. Taylor groans but commits as I begin to uncover my pale, frigid tits. Bare feet are set on the aluminum floor. Asses are bared to the Nushagak shore. A cold pile of gear laying lonely and stiff with the salt of our work in the bow of our skiff. We heave and we hoe as we pull up our nets, and others trade money from won or lost bets. Some drive extra far today as they pass us. Some drive extra close and put on their glasses. Wind and salt touch exposed shoulders and toes. Nothing but air covers us floor to nose. Our catch comes aboard as we haul up the mesh. Slimy fish bits cover our flesh. We laugh and we hunch our shoulders in tight to keep cold at bay as we sample our might. 40 minutes pass by. It counts, we exclaim, as we decide to put our clothes back on that cold day. A tip of the hat as a neighbor drives by, a gesture for ladies from the classiest guy. That really happened. Our skin all prickly from the cool Bristol air, we slip back in our gear, bums no longer bare. One thing we've discovered along with the bay, we're tough and we're bold despite cold on this day. So remember us when 7/7 rolls around. Get naked and fish, good catch will abound. Thank you. You should try it out sometime. It's totally fun. It's totally a good time. This next piece is called Seasons. Some seasons are marked by the changing of leaves or the falling of snow. Some seasons are marked by the packing of bags and new places to go. Some seasons last for years and are made of the same work or words or people or exhaustion or joy that you began with. Some romances have many seasons. Some romances are comprised of a single spring and 1,000 opened buds. Past seasons are for learning from, while the anticipation of future seasons drives us. Will this season hold a candle to the last? Be better? Could it possibly be any worse? The first week of June is a tight season in and of itself. I up loose ends. Sure, I have all the wool socks, cotton underwear I need. I kiss my boyfriend. I eat my last mid-rare burger with fries. I go. The boatyard is home once again. Common colors of this season are gray and brown. The yard is filled with aluminum, gravel, and mud, filled with storage containers and hopeful fishermen, drunk fishermen, filled with people easing into a reduced hygiene schedule, filled with diesel and oil and wrenches and mending needles. We're all preparing for our favorite holiday this time of year, the opener. And then it comes. 'Tis the season to wet your gear, to make sure your boat still floats, and that the only holes in your net are the ones supposed to be there. And just like leaves change color without your notice until suddenly they're all on fire, the days grow longer and longer until you're at the peak of salmon fishing in Bristol Bay. 12-hour openers followed by 3 hours of travel and cleaning, followed by 2 hours of sleep, followed by 1 large cup of coffee, followed by another 12-hour opener, followed by another 12-hour opener, followed by another 12-hour opener. This season can't seem to decide whether it wants to be light or dark. Tempers flare, sleep is rare. Everyone has seen everyone else's ass bare. The bay seems to shrink with so many people hunting so many fish. But the fish The fish, oh my God, the fish. Mercifully, the state finally decides to open the season without time limits, which means more sleep as it turns out. It also means that some boats are already deciding to pack it in. The captain is regularly getting at least 6 hours of sleep, so it's the beginning of the end. And why do we come back? Why do we fish? Whatever your reason, you might be a little sad to see the season wrapping up, but it's not the end, or it doesn't have to be. Seasons are cyclical, are they not? Time to go home, back to regular showers and Midwell burgers, back to sweaty pints and sweaty nights with the people you missed. In some ways, it seems like a dream. It's a good thing we brought back tokens. A filthy shirt, a fat check, some new scar, an ice chest of fillets. 'Tis the season to feast, to remember, and to look forward. But then again, isn't it always? Thank you. And this last one I'm going to read here tonight is called Home. The ocean is not my home, and yet she is like a mother to me. Home is where mother is. The ocean is not my home. I cannot, with my nostrils, my lungs, my mouth, my blood, pull the life-giving oxygen that my body needs from her waters, as some other creatures can. Creatures that do indeed call the ocean home. Creatures that live in a universe that exists on this earth but is out of this world. A universe that our land-loving bodies cannot fully comprehend, but one intertwined with everything our land-born selves inherently know. That is, the cycle of life. Water, its foundation. From ocean to sky to ground to body to ocean to sky to ground to body. A universe that is foreign, that is dangerous, that repels me like a splinter out of flesh. A universe that draws me like a song. Deep space that lets you drift for hours on end, if, in fact, time could be measured in the void. A universe where gravity does not seem to exist until it pulls you with the warning of a perfect storm as you draw near those planets, those stars, those black holes. A universe in which you can drift for a lifetime, then suddenly be sucked into rock or flame against your will. A universe that tosses you with the gentleness of a rolling wave. A universe that gives life, that is the very dust of life. A universe that takes indiscriminately in its blackness, in its depth. The ocean is not my home. I am not a fish of the star or jelly or tuna variety. I am not an urchin crawling along the seafloor feeding on the decay of my world. I'm not a mollusk, soft-bodied and blind. I'm not a crab. I'm not a porpoise. I'm not a shark. I'm not a whale. I'm a human. Homo sapiens sapiens. I walk on 2 legs and I swim with the ease of a creature that was born to run. The ocean is not my home, and yet I am homesick for her. Thank you so much.
Well, that was quite a set. We're going to take a break. We'll be back here at the top of the hour. Before, I'll just make an announcement as you're heading out. Take yourself a break. They've got some, I think, a little food and some drinks downstairs you can buy. And boy, what a beautiful theater to have this in. So take advantage of that. Get you something to eat or drink. Hey, don't forget the umpteenth annual on-site poetry contest tomorrow night. The rules are no more than 30 words long. Include the words full moon. The first and last lines are the same but different. Include 3 Bodie prepositions, locator words like abeam, astern, aboard, aft, to starboard, to port. See you back here at the top of the hour. Hey, we're about 3 minutes away from starting the next set, so you may want to kind of get squared away and find you a seat. We got 3 minutes before we get going. Where you want it right there? Yep, yep. The garbage right there, she needs to have it. Hey, you might get squared away. We're fixing to get wet here. Hey, a big shout out to all the folks that are listening worldwide on KMUN. Yeah, and we're in the beautiful Liberty Theater in Astoria, Oregon. And if you're right, yeah, and if you're like listening in Radio Land, you can't hardly picture this, but like picture a theater that would have been at the turn of the 20th century. They spent millions of dollars, and this is the most beautiful place you could ever possibly ask to perform in, right? So congrats to the Astoria folks. Yeah. I got to say it's one of the nicer places, and I'm not trying to brag, but I have done a lot of poetry and a lot of, I mean, I guess it is bragging. I was the Gravette 4-H Club Speaker of the Month. Only had that for 1 month because Sarah Davis, 11-year-old girl, she did a very moving presentation on treating a cow with a prolapsed uterus, and so it blew my title out of the water. But I just want to let you know I've been big places, but nothing's like the Liberty Theater, and nothing's like the next poet that I'm going to introduce to you. This guy's been kind enough to make me a friend and accept me, gosh, over 18 years ago when a cowboy first strayed in here. He was a legend then. He's a bigger legend now. You saw the future of FisherPoets if you saw the last set. Now you're going to see the history and the legacy. Geno Leech lives between Cape Disappointment and Dismal in Chinook, Washington. He fished the Oregon and Washington coast and was an AB on the Astoria renowned salvage chief. Welcome a legend right here, my friend, Geno Leech.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I won't preface the next poem because the title says it all. Old John Freeburg, my father-in-law. Well, he left the old country in 1926. Heard of the timber, he'd heard of the fish. Crossed the North Atlantic, worked his way to Aberdeen, a young Swede pursuing the American dream. Hired out setting chokers for the Hobie logging camp. Traded his soul for a pair of tin pants. Saturday mornings rode the speeder to Aberdeen, made a beeline for Hume Street and blew off some steam. Well, yeah, sure you betcha he could buck and he could fall. Danced on a springboard with a big fallen saw. Raised hell on Hume Street, by God he blew it all. Old John Freeburg, my father-in-law. Well, old John said goodbye to the Hobie logging camp, started working construction, hung up the tin pants, fell in love, got married. It was time to settle down. He put out the flopper stoppers. He went rolling around. Bought an old cannery tender, the hulk left to die. John seen past the rot, had a gleam in his eye. He hewed a heavy fir keel and an oak bough stem, named it after his daughter, called her Joanne. Well, yeah, sure you betcha, what a fine little troller. She bucked through the swells and rode out the rollers. He fished salmon and silvers from the spring to the fall. Old John Freeburg, my father-in-law. Well, old John struggled and labored and dug razor clams. He shot buck deer and bull elk and lived off the land. Well, he ain't a giant, but what sets him apart? Got a barrel for a chest, a burning coal for a heart. Well, old John 92, but he ain't past his prime. We sit by the wood stove and drink early times. This is his story. I hope it lives on. I'd just like to say, Taksamika, Johan. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I got some folks living back and listening back there in Maine, a town called Bodenham. It's up north of Portland, around Brunswick. And my brother lived back there for years. He's a West Coast guy, but wound up in the service, got married at 62, you know. But anyway, he passed on a couple weeks ago, but he had a good run, man. He was 78. And yeah, they said he didn't start talking until he was about 3 or 4 years old. He just went around making noises like a truck. Guess what? He became a truck driver his whole life. But anyways, so I got his son Rick, my nephew, and family's back there, and probably listening, I hope. This next poem is going to be The Last of the Beach Draggers, and this was inspired by a guy named Morgan back there in Menemsha, Massachusetts. Menemsha, Martha's Vineyard, had a gig back in there and got to know him. And he was getting up in years, and so this inspired this poem between he and the boat and so forth and so on. It's called Last of the Beach Draggers. Well, he slaps the kitchen floor with big bare callous feet, reloads a stained mustard-colored coffee strainer, slides the window open, a fleet of clouds race past the moon, cocks his head, sizes up the weather. One hand's a fried egg sandwich on the drive down to the boat, bottom painting a prayer or keeping her afloat. He's on the rolling black horizon before the red eastward rising sun. Last of the beach draggers, a commercial fisherman. Well sputted down in the captain's chair, worn slick by a million toes, with duct tape brown leather padded arms. He basked in the heat of a diesel stove, feet propped in dashboard clutter, gauges, gouges gloves, and buried long forgotten lucky charms. Slurps coffee black as bunker sea, wags a waterlogged white owl, reads his own ancient history from an old log book. Yeah, he'll let her soak another 15 minutes and then he'll take a look. He sashayed down his toe since before day bloody one. Last of the beach draggers, a commercial fisherman. Well, hypnotized by a spooling bar, he winds wire in a winch, the wraps snap tight against the other. He once worked by his sons and by his brothers. He has no one astern, he has no one abeam. Pencil necks with pointer sticks have holed and sunk the fleet. The cod end swings aboard, they sort the tow. Fishing's all he's ever done. Last of the beach draggers, commercial fishermen. Thank you. This one's hot off the press, so I got to read this one. Yeah, I don't know. Lucky I still got a marriage going. Me and Joanne were going back and forth on this one. Jeez. Hey, man, I ain't going to Carnegie Hall. I mean, come on. Well, this is called Bartering Joe. Well, Bartering Joe never finished a trip without going home with bartering fish. Well, Joe was a dragger, and when they hauled back the sock, he could spot a bartering butsky through 2 splits of rock. Well, Joe bartered fish for any old thing, a 4-foot wolf eel for his wife's wedding ring, and scored a logging road beater for a freezer-burned king. Well, Joe bartered for all kinds of stuff, a satellite dish and half-gallon jugs, bartered a barn door skate and an arrow 2 soap for a nicotine-smelling Arctic mink stove. Well, at the galley table one night, he and the boys were choking down chicken a la king. And one asked, "What would your number one be on that bucket list thing?" Well, Joe said, "I figure a bungee jump off a 4-story pickup would be dynamic, or a cigar tube adventure to the Titanic." Well, fortunately for Joe, he missed a cigar tube trip and keeps on keeping on with bartering fish. Thank you. How'd I do? I don't know. So thank God, I guess, I get to read one by memory or something here. Yeah, this is a crabbing one. I wrote this quite a while ago. It's actually half of it. This was my original. It just is half, and I tagged on some more later. But yeah, it was a tough go, you know, for some of these guys on the Washington side. They had a cannery fire at the Ilwaco Landing. Took out a tremendous amount of pots of gear they had stacked on the dock. And, you know, the Washington guys, they were going to open on the 1st of January, I guess, or right in there. And but because of that, a lot of them had no gear, you know. I mean, terrible, terrible deal, you know, because they're kind of, you know, banking on an opener, you know, to maybe they got some debts going, they got so forth and so on. But guys up and down the coast from Washington, California, beyond, you know, rounded up gear for them, donated some of their own, whatever. And they got those guys going within a few days. It's totally amazing, you know. So it's nice to hear something like that in the world these days, you know, where people are going way out of their way to help each other out. So this is called Pink Orange Glow. Sodium lights, they always, to me, that was kind of their color, if you had to color them. You know, you see them off on the horizon. Crabbers use them, you know. They got them, you know, they started up in Alaska, probably in the Bering Sea or some of those fisheries, and then they started, you know, I mean, some of them, they call them Norwegian sunshine, you know. Fishing has all kinds of slang. But anyway, here we go, Pink Orange Glow. Well, she idled across a breaking bar, casting a sodium glow. The lump was 10 to 14 feet with an occasional buffalo. The crew were wedged in heaving bunks. Grime pillows drank their drool. Their clammy quilts were a patchwork stink of bait and brine and fuel. While the skipper's wash-rock fissured face glowed green in the dashboard lights, it passed more lighthouses and telephone poles. He was a hard-case, stick-and-stay guy. He slurped scalded fishboat Folgers from a varicose vein wide mug, zippoed his umpteenth camel, and kept an eye on an inbound tug. He found a hole in the lump and throttled up a howling 6-1-10. The boat gave a buck. She banged and she rolled and shipped green water again. He ran offshore and sniffed out his string, painted Norwegian green and gloss white. In foaming Black Seas buoys, danced, dove, and teased in the pink-orange glow of the sodium lights. Well, the grog-calic crew rolled out of the bunks. The boat wallowed deep in the trough. Silent and sullen, they pulled on dank boots and questioned the lives they had wrought. Drunk with sleep on a rolling back deck, their lungs dragged in diesel exhaust, and shining like seals in moss green Helly Hansens, they meat-axe crab bait and swung out the block. Thank you.
Hey, one more time, don't let him sit down without. I don't know if you'll still be around, Geno. In the last hour, I'll close the set, and I might mention you in one of those. So if you can't be here, I'm sure somebody will tell you how bad it was. So, all right. Hey, our next Fisher Poet, I tried to get online for some of these fishermen, fisherwomen I hadn't met. I tried to get online, and I was so moved about Melanie's passion for salmon fishing, her passion for sustainable wild salmon fishing, and how her children are involved. She fishes with her family in Bristol Bay. They set net there in the Naknek River District. From Juneau, Alaska, please welcome to the stage Melanie Brown.
That should be good. Thank you. Thanks for the nice introduction. So happy to be here. I am going to just play music tonight and talk a little bit in between. These songs I wrote, and then the music I developed with my music partner, Marcus. We have a duo called Sunny Porch. Someday Marcus will be able to come join me at a FisherPoets gathering. But tonight, I'm going to start with a song that needs no introduction. Flash of silver light, jumping joy grouped in a movement. Your return brings us life. When it's time to go home, you know the pull of your home string guides you, giving spawn too young. You'll never see your body feeds the world around you. Pulsing, filled with purpose, flash of silver light,
being joy grouped in a movement. Your return brings us life. Your return brings us life. Your return brings us life. Salmon song. This next song, it was originally written around my great-grandparents and the love that they showed to me and how it taught me to love. But it's also, I'd like to dedicate it to the dearly departed fish people that have gone on before us. And hopefully we all won't cry together too much over it. But it's called Even When You're Far Away. I learned to handle salmon by your side. You saw me and I could feel your pride. So long ago, your being left this world, but your fire lives on in those you touched with your good. Even though you're gone away, your love is with us still. Your hands cared for us with the food you made. I can still smell and taste your smoked fish in my mind. Your kindness continues when I create and share. Sometimes it feels as if you are still here. Even though you're gone away, your love is with us still. Time and death did not take you away, because you came into our hearts to stay. Even though you're gone away, your love is with us still. I tried many times to be close to another heart. Then you came into my life and something felt altered. When I'm in nature, I see you in everything. Don't you know that you make my heart sing? Even when you're far away, your love is with me still. Time and distance cannot take you away, because you came into my heart to stay. Even when you're far away, your love is with me still. Even when you're far away, your love is with me still. Even when you're far away. Thank you. It also speaks to when we have to leave our loved ones behind to go fishing. This next song, it's called Seasons, and it speaks directly to the seasons, you know, like of the year, but you can also easily sort of translate it into fishing seasons, especially if you're the type of fisherman who fishes many types of fish and gear types. I myself, I'm a salmon gal. I'm a sockeye, Bristol Bay sockeye salmon gal. I just fish one big, strong season and then just sort of plan around it the rest of the year. But this one's a little brighter than the last one, a little more upbeat.
Seasons, and I don't mean in a moody way, I just mean in the beauty way, yo. Oh. When it's cold outside and the ground is white, we find ways for our hearts to glide on. Oh. When the white has turned to green, we become like the birds and bees on home. When the hope of spring turns to summer sun, then it's time to catch salmon on. Oh. Aha. Love is like the seasons, and I don't mean in a moody way, I just mean in the beauty way, yo. Oh. When the warmth of summer turns to rain, it's time to play music and drink champagne now. Oh. When the feasting of fall pulls up a blanket of snow, it's back around the seasons we go on. Oh. Baby, our love is like the seasons, and I don't mean in a moody way, I just mean in the beauty way, yo. Oh. Our love is like, our love is like the, our love is like the seasons, our love is like the seasons, our love is like the seasons. Oh, 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 oh. Our love is like the seasons. Oh, oh.
Thank you. I've got one more for you. It's called Keep On Going. In my opinion, fishermen are the most creative people in the world. You have to kind of be a jack of all trades to like answer to all the unpredictable things that come your way each tide or set or day or hour or minute, you know? You have to be able to respond to anything. And yeah, but I really do feel like it's getting harder and harder to be a fisherman, especially after a year like we just had in Bristol Bay. And I know that it wasn't just Bristol Bay that was tough. The market conditions are just getting really hard. It was kind of a perfect storm of so many factors that came together. And I'm sure a lot of people are scratching their heads and trying to figure out how, you know, like, am I even going to be able to go this year? You know, like, am I going to be able to pull together what I need to pull together to make it happen financially, you know, and then other things too. But yeah, the song is called Keep On Going. Do what you need to do to answer the call of your soul, you know, and just keep doing what you need to be doing to make it. Because you never know what you do now, you know, how it's going to inform your future. So I wish all of you well, and that you find what you need to keep going, if that's what you really want as a fisherman.
All this life can bring pain and sorrow, and there always is a hot tomorrow. Put yourself into what you do, and you will find a way to make it through this life, oh, this life. Even when it seems like nothing is paying off, keep on going. You never know how what you do now will make it showing in your life, this life. Oh, your life, oh, this life, your life, oh, this life. Even when it seems like nothing is paying off, keep going. You never know how what you do now will make it showing in your life, this life. Oh, your life, oh, this life, your life. Oh, your life, oh, this life. Thank you, thank you.
Hey, don't let Melanie Brown step down without one more round of applause. Melanie, thank you. Hey, our last Fisher Poet for this set, and we've got a whole nother set coming up in the 9 o'clock hour, but our last Fisher Poet for this set is Jeffrey Kahrs. Jeffrey fished Alaska and Washington, commercial fisherman from 1980 to 1994 with a few years off here and there for bad behavior. He's the author of One Hook at a Time, a history of the Deep Sea Fishermen's Union of the Pacific. And so I'm going to let him tell you a little bit more about what he does. I don't want to delay it any further. Jeffrey, come on up here to the stage, pard.
Yeah, hi everybody. That was a great set, wasn't it? She's soulful, really soulful singing. You gotta love it. I wrote a book, One Hook at a Time, for the Deep Sea Fishermen's Union. You can get a copy at the, I always call it the bait shack, but I know that's wrong. Anyway, you can get it at the shack then. And today I'm gonna read, you know, when you start fishing, when I started fishing, it was not really very good. It was the early 1980s. Price was bad. You know, anyway, it made for some great stories. And I hope I don't offend anybody when I read this, because, well, it's not all true, but a lot of it is, unfortunately. I lived through it. And this story is called The Bite. Okay, if you know what a bite is, it's like a loop of line that you get caught around your ankle, okay? When the line cinched up around my ankle, I didn't fear anything. But Hillbilly's eyes became as big as silver dollars. He whipped his knife out and wildly shoved it under the long line. I felt worse for him than myself, as he was afraid and panicking for my benefit. I told him to be calm, in part because I couldn't process that I was just a firm tug away from going deep. But I also made a quick calculation. We were fishing in at least 350 fathoms of water, or around 2,100 feet. With a 25 fathom shot of buoy line thrown in, that meant about 2,250 feet of line. After dropping the anchor, we tossed most of our buoy line overboard when I found myself in the bite. I had a solution if the crew acted quickly, and in that quiet moment of waiting for life or death, I wonder how I found myself in this quandary. In 1980, there was nowhere for seasonal workers to camp in Petersburg, Alaska. Petersburg Fisheries Incorporated had expanded the processing plant without providing housing, so most of the summer workers lived in the muskeg, the swamp found in southeast Alaska's temperate rainforest. Living in it was fine once you learned to respect the environment, bring food back to camp, and feed the bears. Build a platform of pallet wood on the muskeg and keep dry. These simple rules were constantly broken, but most of the workers were just high school graduates or college kids looking to make a summer buck. Why should they know the best place to see the bears was the garbage dump? I was down to my last few bucks when I was offered a job fishing. Walking the dock one day, I met Dale. Dale knew my brother and offered me work on a very pretty 44-foot power trawler that was going out for halibut. I was just wasting my time in a swamp, waiting for the cold storage to open, so sure, why not? We were some kind of crew. His woman friend referred to herself as full-service cook, and it was true. When he wasn't changing oil, checking the electrical, or working on the auxiliary engine, they were rocking the mattress. Considering we were getting ready to make a trip, they weren't bothering to conserve energy. I guess it really wasn't much of a surprise. Then Dale hired a young guy who was famous for trying to rob a bank in Ketchikan when he was 16. Ketchikan's on an island, and he didn't have a plane ticket. We got along fine. When we were down in the hold putting halibut in bins and icing them, he wore the halibut gonads like a bikini. Quite a show. The opening was fantastic. The weather was sunny, I didn't get seasick, and I made $1,800. As we ran down Chatham Straits towards home, we tied to another boat and drank Japanese whiskey, which they had traded for Penthouse magazines. I became the richest man in the muskeg and could buy drinks for anyone. Then the cold storage opened and things got busy. I worked there a couple of weeks before they flew me out to pick up a seine boat in Craig. The skipper was a fine fisherman and an incredible screamer. Rather than open the end of his net to let a whale pass, he shot at it with his rifle. The whale put a hole in his net the size of a small town. We spent 2 days sewing that monster up. But it was another $2,000, and I went back to university with a few bucks, little knowing I caught the fishing bug. The next year, after graduating, I was back up in Petersburg. There in the harbor was a longline boat run by a hippie couple. My good friend Paul was a member of the crew. All the other longriders were already on their way to the grounds, but they were still in harbor because someone had put sugar in their diesel. The perp suspected that Paul, who had fished with him, had taken his Loran readings, which in those days were the key to the fishing grounds, as they located longitude and latitude. But it was good for me. Because they were delayed, I went out on the opening with them. And when one of their crew members took a hook to the big fleshy pad below the thumb, I was enlisted as crew. They gave me a half share, which came out to $400. Fishing was already going downhill financially. I waved to them as they headed out the harbor to Sitka. But then I discovered someone looking for a longline deckhand. My first impression was good. Despite missing a hand, Brad showed remarkable hand-eye coordination. He was incredible. He could really operate the roller. He was great. Yeah. He was from Heidelberg, a small Haida tribal town, and had a friend called Scoot, who, when not out on a trip, was evidently always grumpy. Brad went on and on about Scoot's whining. Out of nowhere, he'd say in a gravelly voice, "Where's my steak?" Those were poor times for Alaska longlining, and steak was hard to come by. The Magnuson Act, which created the 200-mile limit, had just gone into effect, but the stocks hadn't been rebuilt, and some were still being fished by foreign fleets. The Japanese were still on black cod, and they kept the price artificially low to keep fishermen from the United States out of the fishery. Prices were 40 cents per pound for large and 25 cents for small. It was the first and last time I ever went bait seining for herring. We picked up other crewmen in his catch can. Hillbilly was mechanically adept and had some idea what he was doing, but it was all new to Logger. They were always rubbing each other the wrong way, and it was Logger who gave Drew the name Hillbilly. "Where'd you get that accent?" "Arkansas." "So you're a hillbilly?" "Fuck you. I'm from Fayetteville, home of the Razorbacks." "Much squealing going on there?" I looked over at Drew in a pleading, abject manner. "Please, sir, let's not get into a fight." Then I told Logger off. "Get off his back, unless you want to be an engineer, not a job you could do." Logger actually turned out to be okay and told me some funny, if terrifying, stories about farm life in the dead of night as we baited. This was because he was as much a logger as Drew was a hillbilly. But nicknames are unfair. One ended up as a hillbilly and the other as a logger. We ran for Welker Seamount, which was 2 days away, and we bucked 5-foot waves the whole time. The Alice was a fine boat, but at just 50 feet, she was originally intended for fishing near the coast. If the weather blew up, she could always move inside. I was seasick the whole time. And because there was no money in the fishery, the skipper didn't have the cash to have a shipwright properly caulked, where the beam of the bow stem and the planking met. The dowsing spray made for a miserable excursion of puking and getting salted down. The crewman in the bunk below me, Hillbilly, wasn't happy when what little juice I had left in my stomach fell to the ground. He complained. I apologized and kept puking. Eventually, on wheel watch, I ate a piece of Sailor Boy pilot bread and then got a few hours sleep. When the boat slowed down, I staggered out on the deck to help set the gear. I could see the skipper was relieved that I could walk. Fishing was just plain bad. The Japanese had probably scraped the seamount clean. No one wanted a broker trip, but if it kept up, there was a chance we would technically be owing money. Still, if you didn't dwell on the money, it was quite entertaining. We listened to an endless loop of Jim Morrison's An American Prayer. Whenever Jim said, "In God we trust," our skipper would yell, "In cod we trust." We were willing to trust in cod, but our skipper's cooking, not so much. One time he served us a cling peach half with a dab of mayonnaise on lettuce. It wasn't but a few years back that lettuce was a big treat in Alaska, but for those of us coming up from down south, well, our unanimous rejection of the mayo and cling peach really hurt our skipper's feelings. Now we knew what "where's my steak" meant. I apologize for not getting back to you on the bite I found myself in, but as with so many fishing trips, nothing happens, and then so much happens, and then to write about it is to rely on memory, which is by nature flawed. Obviously, I'm still alive. I told Hillbilly to go up to the top house and tell the skipper to slow the boat down. The skipper did, and the line immediately became so loose it slipped off my ankle with a gentle tug. I was once again free to keep fishing for no financial reward. When our skipper finally admitted that the seamount was a waste of time, we headed back towards Ketchikan and decided to try Dixon Entrance. Fishing was a little better, but then, as the fog lifted, we realized the Canadian Coast Guard was watching us from 100 yards away. Whoops. We were on the wrong side of the border? Perhaps. All the out-of-season halibut fletches went overboard, though we kept the snapper fillets we'd been collecting to sell in Ketchikan to locals for $2 a pound. Snapper is a delicious fish, but in those days, it was considered gertie bait. No better than fish to feed the fish. I made maybe $1,000 total that summer before my grandfather died, and I had to fly south for his funeral. I would come back to Alaska many times, but whether I made a small fortune or a dime, I had learned a valuable lesson. Don't get drunk and try to go home in the muskeg. You might wake up with water in your boots and a bear scratching your head. That's it. Thank you. Yeah, just one last little poem. I think a lot about the difference between being at sea and watching the sea. Most people's experience of the ocean is on a beach or something, you know, this kind of oceanic effect, you know, it's eternal and so forth. But when you're at sea, everything's moving all the time, right? And so it's a really, it's such a different experience of what the sea means to you. And I wrote this about running. I was thinking about running, you know, when you get in a boat, you run one place, you run another when you're fishing. You know, you're on the move trying to catch them and things like this. So this is a poem called Running Song. And you have to imagine and remember that you're looking at your charts, or, you know, now they have GPS, but you're checking the depth, and you can actually see the pinnacles in the water. It's a three-dimensional view of water, okay? And you have to imagine that as you're running, because part of it's just movement on a straight plane, or on a relatively straight plane, and the other side is this idea of depth. It's called Running Song. I will rid myself of these footsteps. Today, tomorrow, I become the other stride, inevitably strutting about something somewhere out there. I wish I understood plowed land, but see furrows and sway. I return to waves, foam on crests, pass between a channel's stone walls and the green weight of the forest, till open water splits the difference between kelp beds, plots my walk among the waking, pushes open doors, islands spring up from the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. So, boy, we're getting down to it. We have 1 more hour left. We're going to take a little break, and then if you want to come back for the final hour, it should be a fun one.
Check, check. Check 1, 2, check, check. Sounds pretty good. Checking it out. Check 1, 2, check. This is a little louder, a little brighter. Check, check, check. Checking it out. 1, 2, 1, 2, check. Calling all Brownsmead flats. All Brownsmead flats, come to the stage, please. There we go. Check 1, 2, check, check. Oh, there you are. Check out that mic.
What's that?
Talk into that mic there.
Talking this one here, this one's pretty bright. How's the other one? Talking that one, Ned. A little ringy. Fill it up with people. Yeah. Zipper check.
Check 1, 2, check, check. Check 1, 2, check, check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, 7. ¿Está bien? Ok, pura vida. Yeah.
Okay. How's this one?
We'll take this one, they'll take that one. Okay. Sail away, huh? And then sail away, Iredale. Okay.
You want to do lead on Astoria Bar?
Yeah.
Okay, you want me to just sing the part and this to the rain and you do the harmony pounder?
I think I better stay with you.
Okay. You want it?
I'll try to go back and forth.
Okay, so we'll split it up like...
Yeah, just like we always do.
Yeah, this is such a lovely hall.
What the heck?
You do whatever you need. We don't need it.
Yeah, we're going to use these. Sail away.
Okay, guys, we are starting our last hour. I just want to say thank you to Liberty Theater. Thank you to all the volunteers that make it so people like me can just show up in town and enjoy this. And thank you to you, the audience. You guys have been awesome, and it just makes it such a privilege to be up here. So now I want to introduce Brownsmead's Flats from Brownsmead, Oregon. These guys have been doing music for 40 years together, so please welcome them, Brownsmead's Flats.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming out to the Fisher Poet Gathering.
40 years, you think we'll do this right?
Well, I'm the new kid on the block. It's only been 20 for me, but I was a sub for a while. So, you know.
No pressure.
You're on, Dan.
I'm on.
Okay.
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
Sail away, sail away, sail away home.
Sun's gonna rise this morning, moon's gonna shine tonight. If I could see it one more time, I'd dance in the glorious light. Rain will fall, the snow will blow, sun will bake us dry. It's all part of the circle, no need to wonder why.
Sail away, sail away, sail away home. Sail away, sister, sail away home.
Mothers, fathers, daughters, sons, brothers, sisters too. We take a place for a short time and then we start anew. We view each birth with joy and hope, begins another day. But soon our time is up and it's time to sail away.
Sail away, sail away, sail away home. Sail away, sister, sail away home.
Sail away,
Sail away, sail away home. Sail away, sister, sail away home.
I put it in a jar for you, the colors and the light, to take along your journey and to help you through the night. And as you sail out one last time, the beauty you will see. Your wings are gonna lift you and finally set you free.
Sail away, sail away, sail away home. Sail away, sister, sail away home. Sail away, sail away, sail away home. Sail away, sister, sail away home.
We'll all sail away someday, sail away home.
Thank you very much.
Move these things closer. Is that okay? We like being close.
Hey, that's too close. Well, these aren't all fishing songs, but they're pretty much all seafaring songs. So this song is one that I wrote, I guess, 18 years ago.
18?
For the
your math is excellent.
Impeccable. I wrote it for the centennial of the stranding of the British bark Peter Iredale. So it's called The Ballad of the Peter Iredale. Clever. Yeah. Oh well. There. 1, 2, 3, 4. It was 1906. In the month of October, she'd sailed north from Mexico in 28 days. Her master, Captain Lawrence, was a good man and sober. Her crew was 25 brave boys plus 2 stowaways. Product of the Ritson yards, her lines, they were handsome. The largest ship that ever built, a 4-masted bark. She measured near 300 feet from bowsprit to transom. For 16 years she'd sailed the seas through daylight and dark. It's the sand boys, she's hit the bloody sand boys. She's caught up in the breakers on the flats of shore. It's the sand boys, she'll never leave the land boys. Mighty Peter Iredale will sail no more. Tillamook Rock light was spied at 3 in the morning. All hands are called up on the deck to shorten the sails. While waiting for the pilot boat, without any warning, the wind veered to the west and blew a full-on gale. She had 1,000 tons of ballast under her hatches. Still she could not claw her way back out through the waves. She soon was in the surf line, taking breakers in batches. And all aboard were looking out at the watery graves. It's the sand boys, she's hit the bloody sand boys. She's caught up in the breakers on the flats of shore. It's the sand boys, she'll never leave the land, boys. Mighty Peter Iredale will sail no more.
Hollow iron mizzen mast was snapped by the impact. All the mizzen Tom Pamper crashed down on the men. While they dodged the falling spars, you knew every man Jack was certain that the Iredale would never sail again. By morning light, Point Adams sent a crew in a surf boat. Braving wind and wave, they soon saved every hand. And though the optimist among them said she could still float, Peter Iredale was firmly stuck in the sand.
The salver stripped the steel plating off of her framing and left her stem and bowsprit pointing up at the sky. For decades upon decades she endured their remaining, reminding us the Iredale was too tough to die. During the war she was dressed up in barbed wire, while soldiers in helmets patrolled on the sand. She witnessed the flash of the submarine's fire, the only attack upon the U.S. mainland.
It's the sand boys, she's hit the bloody sand boys. She's caught up in the breakers on the flats of shore. It's the sand boys, she'll never leave the land, boys. Mighty Peter Iredale will sail no more. Perhaps this old hulk has been spared for some purpose, while others about her were swallowed up whole. Some quirk of current kept her battered bones on the surface. Her holy folks looked crumbling as the years took their toll. For over a century, her ribs have lain rusting, a relic and reminder of the lost age of sail. While waves wash about her and storm winds are gusting, we see and we remember the Peter Iredale. It's the sand boys, she's hit the bloody sand boys. She's caught up in the breakers on the flats of shore. It's the sand boys, she'll never leave the land, boys. Mighty Peter Iredale will sail no more. The mighty Peter Iredale will sail no more. Thank you.
Okay, here's a song I wrote. I used to say I wrote this for the salmon, which I did, but I think I wrote it for all the anadromous fish that come in and out of the Columbia River. And there are a lot of them.
I was ready to do something else.
1, 2, 3, 4. Let the rivers run wild. Let the rivers run free. Let the salmon swim unhindered to and from the sea. Let the rivers run wild. Let the rivers run free. Let the salmon swim unhindered to and from the sea. Would Woody Guthrie once wrote down a famous song about the Columbia River's power turning darkness to dawn. If he'd known the terrible price we paid, I wonder what verses he might have made.
The mighty dams that man has built are slowly feeling filled up with trash and silt. No place for salmon, eggs, or milk. The Columbia's but a reservoir.
Let the rivers run wild. Let the rivers run free. Let the salmon swim unhindered to and from the sea. Let the rivers run wild. Let the rivers run free. Let the salmon swim unhindered to and from the sea. Now picture, if you will, the Pacific Northwest as a station having a cardiac arrest. The dams that clog its major artery may force us to perform major surgery. The salmon represent our cellular strife. Like the blood in our veins, they bring to us life. Their struggle to survive is our struggle too. The question remains, what can we do? Let the rivers run wild. Let the rivers run free. Let the salmon swim unhindered to and from the sea. Let the rivers run wild. Let the rivers run free. Let the salmon swim unhindered to and from the sea.
Perhaps the solution is not out of reach. The answer may lie in the breach when we restore what was there before. The Columbia will be a river once more. Let the rivers run. Columbia be a river once more. Let the rivers run. Columbia be a river once more. Let the rivers run. The Columbia be a river once more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think they're breaching one of the first dams on the Snake River as we speak. We'll see how it all works out for everybody, and we hope it works for all.
Okay, this next tune we did not write, but we love it. It was written by Mary Garvey, who is a performer here at FisherPoets. And as a special treat to you all, we're not going to play our instruments.
Close enough?
Yep, close enough.
Okay, we'll give this a try. It isn't very far from Astoria's bar, but a very long journey it can be. It can start at the mouth of a mighty blue river and end at the bottom of the sea. And the river still shines and shimmers in the light as it did in our grandfather's day, when they rode all night to fish in the morning and lived in Willapa Bay. When the tide is rough, so very, very rough, so rough that you cannot stand, it drives the little fish right into the nets and the boats right into the sand. And the river still shines and shimmers in the light as it did in our grandfather's day, when they rode all night to fish in the morning and lived in Willapa Bay.
In the mist and the rain, with our labor and our pain, we know what the fishing here is worth.
It is worth more than gold.
When we fill our hold
It is one
of the treasures of the earth.
And the river still shines and shimmers in the light, as it did in our grandfather's day, when they rode all night to fish in the morning and lived in Willapa Bay. It isn't very far to Astoria's bar, but a very long journey it can be. It can start at the mouth of a mighty blue river and end at the bottom of the sea. And the river still shines and shimmers in the light, as it did in our grandfather's day, when they rode all night to fish in the morning and lived in Willapa Bay. And the river still shines and shimmers in the light, as it did in our grandfather's day, when they rode all night to fish in the morning and lived in Willapa Bay.
Woo! I think we're done, boys. I think we're done. Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll be playing tomorrow night at Kala and then also at Xanadu. I think we're out. We're done. We're done?
So I don't know if it needs to be up higher. Okay, wow, that was pretty impressive. Our next performer grew up in Annapolis in a fishing family. Spent every summer fishing in Puget Sound and in Alaska. And he's been writing poetry since he was a teenager. So please give a great welcome to Gary Keister.
Greetings and thank you so much for being here. I know the performers perform so much better when they have a lively crowd like this, and we all really appreciate it. In my 80-plus years, I've seen this industry take a lot of twists and turns. And over the years, I journaled as I was on these boats, and so I've portrayed a lot of the stories that I know from these years of fishing and through poetry. So we'll read a few of my works. The first one's called The Laundry, and it's about a high-line Native American fisherman out of Juneau, Alaska, who would put his nets in the most turbulent of waters and always seemed to catch fish and never lost his gear. It's called The Laundry. Wise Joe White stands wide atop the fog-enshrouded bridge, his purse seiner adrift, awaiting the flood tide in Middle Pass. Currents and eddies are fierce in the Laundry, and setting too early, the turbulence and hurly-burlies will drag his precious net underwater, wrapping and wringing it up like a dish rag. Joe studies the white water as it swirls and churns, hemorrhaging energy as dense cream foam clings to the barnacle-laden rocks. When abruptly the foam moves seaward, he grabs the wheel, signals crew, and spins the Jericho about at full throttle, waving a deckman to yank the Canadian release, discharging the 250-fathom seine into the torrent waters as each crewman prepares for grueling high-speed work, eager to make another set on this perfect tide, expecting to plug their hold with humpies and silver-bright dog salmon. Lost. The skip slid silently through Grenville Channel, the constant purr of the yellow cat thrusting against invisible currents. From his port side perch, window wide, he breathed in the sea and witnessed a phosphorus light show while she plowed across a frenzied, fiery glow. He revered the ocean, as did his ancestors, and each spring anxiously awaited the trip north to the rich fishing grounds surrounding Kodiak Island. Standing in the cramped pilot house, he stretched and placed his ubiquitous coffee mug on the compass shelf, murmuring something about going astern to pee. And now, decades later, only the shadowy Black Sea owns the mystery of back aft on that calm spring night in Grenville Channel. Lupine. Leaving the Aleutians flying high, not a cloud in the cobalt sky, soaring and drifting like an eagle, feeling strangely very regal. Above the mountains, thick with ice, far below, a sand-drenched crevice, flushed with lupine in grand array, swarms of lusty lupine in early May, their tapering spikes of blue and white, pointing at heaven like guns of fright. And when dreaming today, I remember still that bolt from the blue in nature's thrill. Salmon seiner. Flood tide pulling strong and hard, nets heavy. Early gold sun shadows glisten as scraggly Sitka cypress crew up before dawn, defying bone-chilling glacier winds blowing through layers of wool and rubber. The icy Black Sea reveals no trace of life as crewmen pull ferociously on strained hemp lines, the boat heaving and groaning. The crew tugs at the web as it rolls over the steely, pyretic power block, swinging precariously from atop the boom. A tall, lanky kid balances gracefully on the edge of the turntable, meticulously stacking Spanish corks in perfect, symmetrical rows. Out 50 fathoms, a sockeye jumps along the cork line as others fin in the center of the seine. The pace quickens and emotions build. A silvery salmon emerges gilded amesh, and another, and another. The tension mounts. At the end of the seine is dragged aboard. All hands rush to the bulwarks. There are thousands, a silver horde of the finest blood-red sockeye. This is called shipwreck. They did not escape blind Horn's hate, crew despondent and forlorn, despair unbridled. She heads towards the storm's maelstrom. Each tempest exceeds the other, with mounting force, born to destroy their voyage, hammered by winds and the vastest swell ever seen. On the stern, a looming sea, off the bow, a terrifying mountain of water. Her hull pitches, listing over, receiving the sea fore and aft, from gunwale to gunwale. As each approaching wave strikes with awful violence, laying her on her side before righting. The waves pounding her as she forges forward, unwittingly upon a succession of reefs, shattering her rudder as another gigantic wave sweeps the ship as she lurches ahead thrashing. The sea pours into her hold, water up to the hatches, the deafening waves slaughtering all in sight, enveloping her as she hurtles into a cluster of jagged rocks, ripping her apart, masts falling, dragging her over, windows explode, planks splitter, decks cave, water gushes, filling each cranny. A congress of waves repeat their attack, while nauseating sounds of the hull grind against the rocks. Wrecked. And my last one is called the ebb. He visited the rock on the stormy, stony shoreline as long as he could remember. It never appeared to change, yet it did, little by little, at each ebb and flood, as harsh seas whittled out the perfect pew for a boy and a granddad. Now he gazes solo, regarding the curling white water, whispering beneath his black hip boots, recalling how the sea had fashioned him, sailing with the old man from Puget Sound to the Gulf and out west to the unrelenting Bering Sea. Now the water flows deliberately away as life ebbs, one particle at a time, evoking life's marvels and the significance of the coarse-grained granite, hosting the tiniest bits of life that encrusts body and soul. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. That was really good. So we are down to our final performer, and quite a performer he is. Several years ago, they dubbed Ron the sheriff of FisherPoets. And since I usually stick around Oregon for a little bit, I rent a car, so I end up driving him around. And so they called me his deputy. And that may seem like an honor, but nothing good ever happens to Festus. And basically, I'm his Festus. At the same time, I challenge you to find a kinder heart than Mr. Ron McDaniel. I am blessed to call him my friend, and I welcome him to the stage. Please welcome him with me. Ron McDaniel.
Just another happy cowboy. A few short years ago, I met some Fisher Poets. They were performing down in Elko. Follow us to Astoria. Like mythical sirens, they would plead. Well, I didn't realize they had uncovered a deep, abiding need. I had emotions I couldn't understand, so I went to see a shrink. I wasn't sure who I was anymore. I was right up to the brink of utter desperation, keeping something deep inside, these feelings that I'd hidden because of cowboy pride. The psychiatrist asked about my mother, which is where they always start. Though I really didn't want to do it, I felt I had to play my part. See, my mom's afraid of water because she never learned to swim. Why, if I just so much as get wet, well, her countenance was quite grim. And ever since I was a little boy, she never let me near the sea. Promise me you'll never leave dry land. That was her constant plea. So I became a cowboy, a rootin' tootin' buckaroo. If she'd had her way, I'd never be here with the likes of you. One summer, I went set netting with the brothers, the Broderick crew. Father John, though a humble guy, you must give the devil his due. In the winter, he's a mild-mannered teacher at the school. But summers on the Nooshagak, he'll work you like a rented mule. Well, I took my son up with me to let him taste the fishing life. But when we got to Dillingham, we met a couple fellas that caused me lots of strife. They both wore cowboy hats, but they wouldn't engage in conversation. In fact, they ignored me like I was speaking Chinese. That added to my frustration. Why, then stuck-up cowboys, they wouldn't even utter a single word. I thought they'd give us a bad reputation among fishermen, so I thought I better cut them from the herd. I said, son, this could get ugly, but I'm going to clean them cowboys' clocks. He said, Dad, they ain't real cowboys, they're Russian Orthodox. Well, we only fished a few days, but it sure was enough to know I liked wearing 620s. I looked good in extra tufts. I wanted to be a fisherman. I tried with all my might. But did I really like the work or the clothes they wear? Am I a transvestite? And what about my buckaroo buddies when they find I've got a passion for the ocean? Did those Fisher Poets slip something in my drink, some secret nautical potion? Did those cowboys know as we trailed those cattle down the trail that underneath my cowboy hat I sported a ponytail? Yeah, I'm a cowboy in a skiff. I never will grow up. Seems like fishermen and cowboys drink from the same darn cup. And after many visits with my therapist, his diagnosis is quite sensational. I don't have to choose between cowboys or fishermen. He said I'm bivocational. Thank you. I ain't ever done a wardrobe change on stage here. Yeah, I don't hoop and holler. I ain't used to getting dressed with nobody around. My wife even turns the light off, so. Adrift and floating, then washed up on the shore. Most folks don't even know what this was once used for. But to the fisherman, it's clear what washed up from the brine. See, cowboys would call this a rope, but you and I know it's a line. We both use it to catch things we want to keep. Cowboys catch wild cows, and fishermen harvest the bounty from the deep. I often look at this line and I wondered how many crabs did it pull in? Did it make their wallets fat with cash, or are they still much too thin? This line's been used for roping cows, pulling in big pots, for lashing down our gear and tying things with knots. The same line you use to do your job can be the one to kill you. The rope we catch a cow with can be the one to spill you. Now, there ain't no guarantee you'll always catch something in your loop. Some days you're eating ribeyes, but most days you're slurping soup. But see, there's a connection between us when we hold it in our hand. When you're out there on that ocean, and I'm back here on this land. You know, most folks think we're different. In some ways, I think we are. But the distance in between us is really not that far. It don't really matter whether you call this a rope or a line. You've been blessed to live the life you live as I've been blessed to live mine. Now, to most folks, this is just a crab line that washed up on the shore. But to an aging cowboy, it just means a whole lot more. Oh, you can tell it's been used a lot. You can see that it's fraying. But it reminds me of the fisherman, always sticking and always staying. I told Geno I think he had to head somewhere else. I told him I was going to mention him. That ain't no made-up poem. For the knot workshop one year, they found some crab line washed up on the shore, and they cut a bunch of it into lengths for teaching folks how to tie knots. And if you hadn't ever done that workshop tomorrow, you sure ought to go to it. It's a neat deal. Cowboys and fishermen, they always like tying stuff up, right? So it's a neat deal. But they got done and had a few coils, and Geno, give me this. Said, can you do anything with this? And I said, yeah. I tied a Honda in it. And it's not exactly perfect for roping cows. It's a little bit lightweight. We get windy, but every spring I go catch something with it. I try to catch a day that's not windy, and I might be at a Brandon, and we might catch some 150-pound calves and drag them to the fire, but I've roped a 600-pound yearling just once every spring, just to have this connection to these fishermen, to think about Geno pulling me up some crab line that washed ashore, wondered what I could do with it. And I would tell you this, it's easier to tell with Geno not here. he and I come from this generation. He's a little older than I am. I'm not just humbled that Geno would turn out to become a friend, but so many of these men and women here that fish just kind of embrace this cowboy they drug up years ago and invite me back every year. And I really did go fish with John Broderick and his boys. And I mean, it's a prized possession. If you don't fish, you won't know what this is. It won't mean nothing to you. But from 2010, and Doreen told me they don't even give you these with your fishing licenses anymore, but I got our fishing license where we fish there in Bristol Bay. Still kept them. I'm proud of that. It don't make me a fisherman because I spent several days there, right? But I got to do something that less than 1% of the world got to do. I got to go be side by side, shoulder by shoulder with some set netters that were hauling in fish. And boy, did we have a run. They plugged the nets. It was quite a deal. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that exposure. I'm grateful, for Geno, Dave Dinsmore, Jay, John. They've just been so kind to share their world with me. And so we come from that generation where we didn't have to be touched and petted to feel loved when we was growing up. And I don't mean nothing about that now. In fact, I got 4 kids, all of them boys, except for 3 of them, and it started with my girls. I hugged on my girls, and then my boy. Had my boy 10 years later, and he's a grown man now, and just lives 25 minutes from me. But when I see him, I hug and kiss that boy every time, every day. We see each other, right? But, oh, yeah, thanks. I ain't saying that to impress nobody. I'm saying it to kind of set you up for it. It ain't always that easy. I got in this hugging mode, and a few years ago, Geno come off the stage, and I hugged him. And then we had this writer's workshop, and this is the actual notes from the writer's workshop. Did any of you go to the workshops today? Boy, yeah. Were they good? Yeah. Radio audience, you can't see all the hands up everywhere. But I'd encourage you to go to the workshops. I love to go to the writing workshops. And I went to John Broderick's writing workshop. And he's always kind of stretches you. I don't know how to write. I'm from Arkansas. I can barely read. Being broadcast across the world by KMUN, and I am making my home state proud. But ain't nobody I know still awake, so so John was kind of stretching us, and he was like, show them, don't tell them with your poetry, with your words, write lines that show but don't tell. And he said, write one long descriptive line of something and then follow it with a short line. So here's what I wrote the day after I hugged Geno. Hugging Geno was like single-handedly trying to move a recliner chair through a door that was too small. An awkward moment passed. Hey, we're going to wrap it up with this. You've been a great audience. If you're listening on KMUN, this is it for the night. Be sure to tune in tomorrow. I really don't read a lot of my poetry. I try to memorize it, but I wrote this one during the COVID, and I just kind of finished it recently. The COVID, on the one hand, and I hate to admit this because it was so hard on so many people, but on the one hand, it was pretty good for me because I travel. I don't just cowboy, but I sell horse drugs and vaccines to veterinarians and travel around a lot. And so the COVID everybody had to stay home. I'd never stayed home that much in 40 years of marriage. And I would tell you this, and I ain't saying it because it's on the radio because my wife's not listening anyway, but I loved it. I loved being home. I didn't know if I'd like being home that many days in a row, and I was home a long time. But it was an odd time. Things were different. I couldn't go day work. I couldn't go cowboy for some ranches that I'd cowboy for in Kansas and Oklahoma because they wouldn't let you come out of state. They were trying to keep everything, and so I was home a lot. And the other thing we had in Arkansas and in the middle part of the country, we had a meat shortage. I don't know if y'all had a meat shortage during the COVID, but you couldn't get meat. And if you raise cattle like me and you take them to your local butcher, he was 300 days out for me to get an appointment to get some cattle butchered, so we were running short on meat, and I was going crazy. I think I was losing my mind, and this is a poem I wrote as a result. I think my horse and I were kind of communicating with each other through this period. And I've got several horses, but I have this one mare that I kind of use the most, and I think she's kind of connected to me. And so Meezie's going to read the part of my mare.
Under a little bit of protest.
A horse whisperer I'll never claim to be, but yesterday my horse spoke telepathically. Now, I'm sure many of you look at me with doubt. Before you say I'm crazy, just please hear me out. Now, it could be this isolation that's given me cabin fever. I can't stop these horse voices in my head. I'm an unwilling receiver.
Hey, Ron, what's the deal? Why you around the house so much? You often walk out in my pasture to give me a pat or gentle touch. I'm alarmed at this behavior. Are you selling me to another ranch? I'm sorry I shouldn't have bucked you off or run you under that branch.
Relax, I tell her. You've not been sold. I'm simply sheltering in place. There's a virus among us that limits my contact with the human race.
Is that the reason you put on gloves and walk around in a mask? You're busy mowing, fixing things, and catching up on tasks? And what's with riding me every day? You never leaving town. I'm sick of your constant training and lunging me round and round.
Oh, quit your belly aching. This is exercise you need.
Just take me to my stall where I can munch on hay and feed. And Ron, I gotta tell you, those gloves just make me nervous. The anxiety they cause me is really a disservice.
Oh, I see. Doc only wears a glove when he comes to give you care. It's to protect you both from germs. Now, don't you think that's fair?
You call it fair when Doc comes out to clean the gelding's funk, then snaps on a glove and without shame starts handling his junk. And when he wraps my tail, he ain't decorating me for a parade. He starts lubing up his glove. I won't say where he'll invade.
Well, COVID-19's tough on us all. I'm really beginning to worry. The stores are out of meat. They better fix that in a hurry.
Oh, great. I'm stressed already and you spring this news on me? Just open up the gate and turn your back. I need the chance to flee. Meat starvation does crazy things. It'll cause men to lose their mind. It creates a panic, a zombie-like state. They'll gnaw any bone they find.
My point exactly. History tells us the unspeakable effect on the mass. You see, long ago some folks got lost. They were searching for a pass, known as the Donner Party. They ran out of meat, and as the story goes, they had to eat some humans from their head down to their toes. And now I see folks leering at me. I fear it's my flesh they crave. I'll never let them see me sweat, though. I'll be confident and brave.
Oh, in that one event, the humans were main courses, but every time folks get lost and desperate, they always eat their horses. People forget this mighty country was built on the horse's back. We plowed your fields, cleared your forests. We had to haul your gear to pack. We helped you gather your cattle. We carried you off to war. We pranced in parades. We carried your children. We did your every chore.
I don't dispute what you say, but we need something else to eat. And through the centuries, man has developed an appetite for meat.
May I suggest you eat your dog? I hear it tastes like chicken. I know at first it sounds absurd, it makes your heartbeat quicken, but roast of canine could catch on. Please just think it over. We could market it through a fast food chain and call it the McRover.
Meezie Hermansen, folks.
Now, I have to say one thing, because Ron's people are asleep, but I live in Alaska and my people are not, and I am a veterinarian. I do not condone the McRover.
Thank you, Meezie. Hey, thank you. That's our show for tonight. Thank you for coming to Astoria. Thanks for coming to Fisher Poets. We'll see you tomorrow night.